Hello and welcome to our webinar today. At Legal and General, we really believe that wellbeing is both a right and a responsibility. We all have a right to be well, no matter who we are and what we do. And we all have a responsibility for our own wellbeing. So modern life is challenging, it throws things at us, often without warning, and there are many things we can do and many things that impact our wellbeing at the same time. But there are things that we can do to help ourselves, to move forward and to take control. When it comes to work-related stress, Legal and General has a range of tools and support services that employers can use with their employees and their line managers, and we will cover these later on today as part of our discussion. But first, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. So we have Vanessa, is our Claims and Governance Director and the founder of our claims philosophy and our approach to wellbeing, leading our team of claims and clinical specialists to deliver on all the important promises that we have and that we give to our customers. We also have Tarun Gupta, our Chief Medical Officer, here today and supports Vanessa's team. He is also a GP and can give us an interesting perspective from that side. And then we have Charlotte Rush and Daryl Starkey, specialists in our clinical team. Welcome to you guys. You're working every day with individuals to help them to navigate their wellbeing challenges. Welcome to you all. So if you're joining or you're watching this video today, it'll be important for us to set out what you're going to expect to get from this session. Now, what we will do is cover the roles and the responsibilities of the employer and specifically focusing on the line manager in that employment relationship with the employee. We'll look at the things like reasonable adjustments and how we can provide employees with good coping strategies to enable them to function in the workplace. We'll also cover what we see as an insurance company in terms of the spectrum of stress. What is work-related stress and why it isn't a reason for an income protection claim, but how we said a moment ago, we can support you as an employer in helping your employees proactively manage work-related stress so that it won't have such an impact on them and, more importantly, on your business. So to kick us off, we always like to start with a definition of these things because we believe it's really important that everyone is starting from the same place. So I'm going to come to Vanessa now. Vanessa, can you define stress for us, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Jo. So stress can be defined as a state of worry or mental tension caused by a difficult situation. Stress actually is a natural human response that prompts us to address challenges and threats in our lives. It's back to the fight or flight that we used to encounter when we were in the previous years, that essentially we would fight against a foe. Everyone experiences stress or to some degree. The way we respond to stress can make a difference to our overall well-being. Stress affects both the mind and the body, so both the physical and psychological aspect to stress. A little bit of stress is good and can be a really good motivator to help us perform daily activities. Learning how to cope with stress can help us feel less overwhelmed and support our mental and physical well-being. And that's about our personal resilience and how we deal with situations.
Thank you, Vanessa. And Tarun, is there anything you'd like to add to that from your perspective?
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Jo. Yeah, I think, we are looking at a specific type of stress when we talk about work-related stress, and it's likely to build on what Vanessa said in terms of that definition of stress. Work-related stress is a kind of response that people have when they're presented with work demands and pressures that are not matched to their knowledge and abilities, and which they challenge their ability to cope. And that's effectively recognised by the World Health Organization when they talk about work-related stress. And I think there's two aspects to this, really. There's the kind of preventive piece and the reactive piece, and we're going to go into that in more detail as the talk unfolds. And we need to make a distinguishment, or make a kind of a distinction between pressure or challenge and stress. And actually, when does one become, the kind of precursor to something that could be clinical or medical and might need more attention, And I think that's an important distinction when we're looking at work-related issues.
Great, thank you. So yes, there is a complex area, but important to understand that there is a spectrum there, and it's very, it's important to use the benefits of an insurance company with all the experts that we employ to help employers navigate this complex area. So as an opening question, I guess following on from that, what are your thoughts as a panel and your observations on maybe how things have changed and evolved in relation to work-related stress? And I guess as a follow-on to that, people's awareness of tools and techniques to help manage that as well. So if we can come to Taryn, first of all, from a CMO perspective, it would be great to hear from you, please.
Thank you again. So I think, first of all, we should acknowledge that this is a very topical issue. It's kind of something that's hot in the press. It's also high up on the government's agenda. There are, the statistics are all out there. We've got 1 in 13 people on long-term absence who are economically, presumed to be capable of work. The government's focus is on, good quality occupational health, but that's a recognition in itself that provision at the moment is variable, and also recognition that only around 50% of people are able to access support. So when we look at work-related stress and whose domain that is, work-related pressure, work-related challenges, it's murky water. You've got an individual who's clearly having some difficulty and perceives some problems that might hinder their ability to work in their current workplace. You have the medical team who kind of possibly not best placed to evaluate that problem, given that the kind of issues and their solutions are unlikely to be found in medical treatment. And then you have an employer and potentially an insurer behind that. So, it's a kind of interesting conundrum and space, and certainly one where people are becoming aware of tools and techniques to help manage their own stress, but actually sometimes the factors that are influencing that are at the organizational level or perhaps at the local team level, and they need to be managed in that way.
Yeah, thank you. And Charlotte and Darryl, is there anything that you would like to add to that from your perspectives?
Yeah, so I'll take it from here if that's okay. Thanks for that, Taryn. So we differ from an occupational health. Occupational health advice. It's not therapeutic because it's not therapeutic treatment. So we look at that helping in several ways, and that's empowering the employers to support their staff to prevent an absence, or in the instance of a stress-related absence, helping them return to the workplace. So we've had a newly installed sort of helpline, which means a clinical specialist is available during work hours and can be contacted over the phone or through email. We can provide supportive documents there, such as a stress risk assessment and wellness action plans for employers. We also have the EAP Spectrum apps. That's a new upgrade as well. So that's for employees as well as their family, and Care Concierge. So that's to support carers, and Teladoc virtual GP appointments, because one of the big problems at the moment is struggling to get GP appointments. And there's generalised support available and information on adjustments for employees with pre-existing conditions, which can be affected by increased work-related stress, workplace stress.
And is there any cost to employers of using any of these services that we provide?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. No cost either. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So in terms of, we've just heard about people not accessing occupational health, and there's probably a concern around cost there. This is all available completely free as part of being one of our customers, which is a significant benefit that employers and their employees can benefit from. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. Exactly. And we'll make sure that these are available, that we provide links as part of the provision of this webinar as well to some of the things that, or all of the things rather, that Darryl has referenced there. So I guess, Vanessa, in terms of, sort of you're heading up that area from a notification perspective within claims, we have been seeing an increase in potential claims for stress where an individual is unhappy with a set of circumstances, but there is no, and this is the important part, there is no clinical illness. And we started to see that increase in 2019, and this has continued. So could you talk a bit more about that for us?
Certainly, you know, you've quite rightly said, we'd started to see this increase from sort of 2018, 2019. And in part, it could be a good thing because we've been opening up the conversation around mental well-being, encouraging people to talk about their challenges. And particularly, we'd started that off with our Not a Red Card campaign a number of years ago. But have seen it really materially increase throughout the pandemic, whereby individuals are really just unhappy with a set of life circumstances at that given moment, whether it's due in the workplace, whether it's at home. Sometimes it's the challenges of being a carer as well, caring for young children, for elderly. And we're seeing this quite significantly across our book of business. But because an individual is having these challenges and struggling with all of the dynamics and trying to juggle everything that's going on in their work and their personal life, doesn't necessarily equate to the payment of a valid income protection claim. When we're assessing a group income protection claim, or even an individual income protection claim, we're actually looking at the individual's function and what they're capable of doing on a daily basis, and how this might correlate with the insured definition of disability under that income protection policy, whether it's their own occupation, whether it's suited. We've got activities of daily working and living. And also on the individual side, we've got functional ability tests, also known as FATs. And essentially, that's what we're doing. We're looking at whether the individual can function in that role in line with that definition. So if it's the own occupation, for instance, we're looking at that generic definition and what it means to actually understand what aspects of the role that individual can do. And that's what we're really focusing on, what they're capable of doing rather than what they're not capable of doing. And if the circumstances were different, you know, you take them out of that organisation and put them into a different organisation, different workplace, would they still be capable of doing that role? And if the answer is yes, they could do that and function well for a different company, then clearly they're not a valid income protection claim because there's no clinical illness. And that's what we're really determining. It's that functioning and how they function within that workplace.
Thank you, Vanessa. So I guess for the employers that are watching this, and maybe the intermediaries as well today, if you're not sure if it's a work-related stress claim, what can you do? What do we advise?
Well, hi, Jo, again. So I would definitely suggest contacting the Be Well helpline, because as soon as you contact us, you get to speak to one of our clinicians. If it isn't a claim, we can support with things like return to work plans. We can discuss adjustments. We can discuss mental health action plans, risk assessments, and give information just regarding common conditions to support your employees and what they might need to be able to stay well and healthy at work, even if they do have a pre-existing mental health condition or a physical condition.
Thank you. And all that education and information is going to help the employer in so many other ways, because as we've said, these things are starting to appear and be more material for a lot of people in life right now. There is so much that people are having to deal with. So the better equipped employers are to know where to go to get these pieces of support, the better, really. So yeah, do take advantage of that Be Well helpline that we have. And again, that's absolutely free to contact the experts on the end of that line. So we talked about the sort of circumstances that the individual is in, and obviously it's, you know, the workplace is part of the issue. As you were saying, Vanessa, if you took that person out of that workplace, there may be an actual, you know, there might be like a completely different person. So if we take that a little bit further, it's telling us, I think, that organisational culture is really, really important as well. And organisations should have a great deal of control over the culture in their businesses. So this brings us on to the role of the line manager, the people that are often referred to as the squeezed middle. They've got the pressure coming down from above. They've got to support their teams from below. It can be a really challenging role, but they are so important. They're almost the backbone of the culture in many organisations. I think we'd all agree. So in the context of that, how important is their role in influencing workplace health, and how can they help enable these positive workplace outcomes? So that's a question open to the whole panel. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So under health and safety legislation, an employer has the responsibility to ensure that not only do they provide a physically safe environment, but also a psychologically safe workspace for people. Yeah. And part of that is actually about the appropriate training and support. And it's vital that, you know, we're asking line managers to support their people and have awareness around mental well-being. But it's really important that we actually provide that support to the line managers themselves, because ultimately, at the end of the day, they're one of our colleagues, they're one of our employees, and we have to ensure that they are adequately supported and trained to help them actually identify where individuals might be struggling. Often we can see things occurring or manifesting over a period of time, and that then ends in the individual or their colleague becoming absent from work. So it's partly about their training, but also about training and encouraging line managers to have open and honest conversations, and also about actually supporting and identifying when an individual, one of their team, is actually struggling.
Yeah. And things that happen anyway in many line manager employee scenarios is that you've got a one-to-one. It doesn't need to and shouldn't be focused on just what's on your work list that week. There are other conversations that are really important to have at those times to build that psychologically safe environment, as you say, Vanessa, that's so critical, so that when somebody is potentially needing some support, they feel that that the door is open and somebody is prepared to listen and help there. Anything else that anyone wants to add on that one?
Yeah, I can add something from the clinical perspective, because we have these sort of calls with the employees as well, members we call them, and we come across a lot of members who don't really speak to their managers, right? So they don't know that they're struggling with the workload or targets. So it's really important just to, I'm putting an emphasis on that communication, as Vanessa did as well. So, and as she mentioned as well, like they need support as well, and training, because a lot of it is expected of them. So I think it's really important, to have those conversations with your manager or the manager with the employee. We can be part of that with the stress risk assessments as well that we provide from the helpline and in our assessments. So yeah, really important not to let the communication go.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we've talked about the psychologically safe environment. We've talked about the culture, and that this is really important anyway, because it's part of health and safety legislation. And I think one of the things that's well, it was supposed to, I guess, move us on as the nation in terms of fitness and sort of ability to work, was the Fit Note. So Taryn, I think from your perspective as a GP, it would be really great to understand, I guess, what should be the role of the GP and the Fit Note as part of this conversation and this sort of control and empowerment that we're trying to create here for the employer and the employee.
Thanks, Jo. So, the government revised the Fit Note quite a few years ago now, around 2010. And the idea was that, we moved away from simply it being a sick note to a fit note, and the idea that you might be maybe fit for work. And so this note is designed to the clinician who's issuing it can tick a box, maybe fit for work, and then kind of write a few pointers, which I think is meant to be a start of a to generate a conversation with the employer. I think, we're all well aware of the strain and pressures in general practice. Unfortunately, it hasn't quite evolved in that way. One of the articles I read recently said that, in 2021, there were around 6 million Med3 notes issued in the country, of which 95% said not fit for work.
Wow.
And I think, probably there's scope to review that and kind of leave it more open as where the reporting is more subjective, to simply say that that person who's issuing that note probably in 10 minutes has not performed kind of fitness for work assessment, which does rely on underlying knowledge of that person's occupation, of relevant legislation, of adaptations, of workplace issues, of hazards and risks that might need controlling. It's probably fair to say they haven't done that assessment in the 10 minutes. And actually what they might want to say in those cases is maybe fit for work. Please consider a discussion with the employee or further review. There seem to be workplace issues. And I think that kind of averseness to to work or risk, it's probably counterproductive in terms of how that individual then perceives the mental, how the employer then perceives it. It actually has a kind of flow through effect in that employers then feel reluctant to kind of explore that issue. You might have an occupational health service that doesn't want to collaboratively work with the general practitioner because they feel they've passed an assessment. And often actually the assessments are not very detailed, particularly in the pandemic. From a kind of jobbing GP perspective, I can kind of tell you that we often don't have the time or resource or training to put into issuing Med3 notes, and it is based on an individual's request. In fact, several practices are now suggesting that you can, submit your request and kind of you'll receive a note based on what you've suggested. Now, the employer has a duty of care to the individual under Health and Safety at Work Act. They have a duty of care to ensure that person is safe at work and to think about their well-being, and that goes both ways. The employee has to feel they have an obligation to the employer. So there are some basic legislations already out there from yesteryear. Plus, you've got things like the Equality Act 2010, which is kind of focused on more inclusion rather than exclusion, and what people can do. And I think this all or nothing approach to work can be quite counterproductive. And one of the statistics in that article was saying, that actually people that have been off for more than 6 weeks, up to a fifth of those are not coming back. So these things can have downstream impact, inadvertently perhaps. Just as, some of the other numbers are that people that have been out of work for a year, less than 10% are coming back successfully. So I think there's a balance to be struck between an acute illness and obviously a clear medical justification for a period of absence from work in totality and total incapacity, and then starting to think more generally when you have a 3-month sick note as to whether that assessment could have been made objectively and convincingly at that time, whether actually a more detailed review is required around what that person could do and including them rather than excluding them on an ongoing basis based on a brief consultation in the GP setting.
Yeah, thank you. Again, so anyone else would like to add anything to that perspective there from what you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I think situations are not going to be fixed with medication. Sometimes they're not going to be fixed with being off work. Sometimes you need to collaboratively work with your employer and say, actually, for me to get through this situation, I'm going to need X, Y, and Z adaptation and adjustments. And that's kind of where the communication comes in as well. And talking and saying, actually, this is going on in my personal life, or this is happening with the kids, and I'm really struggling at the moment to balance absolutely everything. Yeah. And that's kind of where we really advise people to do wellness action plans, have stress risk assessments, that type of thing.
And presumably then come back to those. It's not a once and done. It's, I guess, the thing, and it's the opening up of that conversation and being happy to have that conversation as often as it needs to be had.
Absolutely, especially with workplace action plans, is they're owned by the individual, so they're not owned by the employer, they're owned by the person experiencing it. So actually they can take it from place to place and they can adjust it and adapt it and say, actually, that worked great for me. We're going to add that on, or this isn't working so well, I'm going to take it off. It's not a fixed in stone kind of document.
And that's really helpful to know. It's almost like a portable action plan, like you say, that can go with you and adapt to your circumstances, whatever they might be. So another really practical thing that we can help with there. So I think it's always great to bring this to life. Are there any examples of this that can illustrate? And it's maybe a typical journey might be the wrong description, but a journey for an individual and what that might look like for them.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example if you want. I know Charlotte's probably got some as well, but we recently had a case where someone had a situational issue related to the workplace. This was during assessment, this was, discussed. So they weren't taking any medication. There was no evidence that the condition was a clinical illness from his treatment or how he was presenting during the assessments. That's an over-the-phone assessment. But the VCS supported the line managers and HR to have a discussion using the risk assessments. That's our stress risk assessment. And the employer was provided with EAP to support them back, and that was with Spectrum. And this resulted in the member returning to work, with the supportive plan provided by the clinician. So, and then later down the line, the clinician got some feedback. The clinical team got the feedback saying, you know, they were unaware of it. So this conversation never come about, but, you know, with early intervention, it came about, but with those conversations, it could have been sort of spotted earlier. So that's what we encourage, and that was a good outcome there. Yeah,
literally, the sooner the better with these things. Absolutely.
And we refer to EAP as well, so we take that out of their hands. We're not saying, you know, we're not signposting. We do that work as well and sending it on to the employee as well, just to get the conversation going, right?
Yeah,
we're still involved there. Yeah.
And Charlotte, any other examples that you can bring to the discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a case on the helpline when an employee rang and they needed some support about neurodiverse conditions, neurodivergent conditions. And we set up a HR call with them and went through adjustments, adaptations for this individual and things that they could take to or any member of their team who come to them next with it, so they don't need to have that conversation with us again. So we sent them over some mind documentations, ADHD welfare packs, things like that they were able to use with their employee.
Thank you. And I think that's another thing really important for viewers to take away from this, is that there's so much content out there, which is amazing. But what we'll hopefully do with this session today and giving you these examples and the tools is to be able to signpost, so that you don't have to take the time to go through all the websites and find things that are going to work for you. So signposting is something that we'll be able to help with as well. So we've covered a lot today, some really practical tips for employers to apply in their own businesses, whatever the size or shape of that business might be. So I'd like to ask panelists for final thoughts before we wrap up today, if that's okay, please. So Vanessa, if I could come to you first, please.
Yes, for me, it is about communication, absolutely key at all levels, and having that honest and trusting relationship between the employee and the line manager. But from a claims perspective, you know, we're determining functioning, and stress and pressure can be a great motivator. We all need it, as we've already stated and alluded to. But with the right support and remaining within the workplace, it's often the right action for the individual and is a positive outcome. It's a positive outcome for the individual. It's positive for the business. And ultimately, as human beings, we need the structure in our lives and we need connection with people, as we've seen throughout the pandemic when we did lose that degree of connection. So I think that is a really positive outcome for individuals, is to remain within that workplace.
Thank you, Vanessa. Taryn, can I come to you next?
Yeah, just to build on what Vanessa said, really, I think, you know, an all or nothing approach to work is really, you know, very rarely constructive. And a focus on what that individual can do with the appropriate adjustments and looking at that function is probably going to be the best way forward. And just to conclude by saying that there's been tremendous advances in terms of technology, ergonomic adaptations and equipment, especially in the last couple of years, that has allowed so many more people to kind of resume gainful employment and come back to work or flourish at work with their existing condition. So due consideration to those things, having an open mind and thinking about the art of the possible is probably my takeaway for this session.
Thank you. Charlotte, coming to you now, please.
Probably no surprise to say wellness action plans. I just think they're great. I think they're great, not even for home stress, but for work stress, sorry, but also home life as well. And it also gives your manager clear guidance on how that person likes to be managed, and how you respond to feedback, or how you respond to certain situations that crop up every single day that can have a cumulative effect on you. So definitely workplace.
It feels like everyone should have that.
Yeah, absolutely, Charlotte. For me, it really helps that communication between the individual and their line manager, and helping to give the line manager clues what to look out for when I'm struggling, because they're not mind readers.
Yeah. So important.
Absolutely.
So a great tip there. Thank you. And Daryl, to come to you.
Yeah, mine's promoting dialogue. So don't ever let it drop. And I think that's one of the things during the pandemic, you know, maybe you're working remotely and people have got used to it, right? So promoting dialogue, don't let it, you know, fall, don't let it drop, because as Vanessa said, like, how does someone know if something's not right? You know, you've got to keep in touch. So I think, you know, keeping the dialogue going, and I like to say, you know, what you bring to a company as well. You know, every job, you're a key part there. You know, anyone just coming in can't just pick it up like you know the job as well. So sort of reminding them, you know, you're important parts of that business as well. So keep it going. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks to all our experts today. I think there's been a really illuminating and practical webinar. So hopefully you can take away some practical things that you can do with your own businesses. And to help, we do have the tools. We've got the support that we can offer. We do have the Be Well helpline. So we will make all that information available. If you want to shortcut and you don't want to spend time researching things, then come to the right place. We'll have that information available. And if not, contact one of our people on the Be Well helpline, and they'll be able to help you as well. So thank you. And we look forward to getting your feedback, and useful things that you might think that you would benefit from. Do let us know. Thank you.